The Cosby Show, 1984 to 1992, was more than just a hit sitcom. It was a cultural milestone that portrayed family, humor, and love with warmth and charm. Week after week, audiences welcomed the Huxtables into their homes, laughing along with a cast that seemed full of life. But behind the laughter, time has brought sadness. Several cast members have since passed away, some after quiet struggles with illness, others in ways that shocked fans around the world. Their losses are a sobering reminder that fame doesn't shield anyone from tragedy. In this tribute, we look back at the lives and untimely deaths of the actors who once brought The Cosby Show to life. Earl Heyman was born on October 11, 1926 in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and began playing the role of Russell Huxtable in The Cosby Show in 1984 at the age of 58. On screen, Russell was a wise, refined patriarch, Cliff Huxtable's father, who embodied dignity, integrity, and a soft-spoken strength that resonated with millions. But behind the scenes, Earl Heyman was a man who spent most of his life cloaked in quiet contradictions. Born into the harsh reality of Jim Crow segregation, his childhood was marked by relentless racial degradation, silence at the dinner table, and the strict Christian conservatism of his parents that suffocated emotional expression. He escaped into literature and eventually classical theater. But even as a prodigious Shakespearean talent, Heyman was often marginalized in both Hollywood and the British theater scene for being black. And rumors swirled of his bitter resentment toward casting directors who he claimed boxed him into dignified Negro roles. Though he was never publicly outed in his lifetime, his decades-long companionship with Norwegian seaman Rolf Sørnes, whom he openly called his partner, ignited years of industry gossip. The two lived together in a quiet, semi-private domestic life, but Heyman was known to avoid public discussion of sexuality, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of pride. Fellow actors noted his intense perfectionism and mood swings in rehearsal, and whispers of isolation, particularly in later years, were frequent. His biggest professional disappointment came when his dramatic stage career was eclipsed by the popularity of The Cosby Show, reducing him to what he reportedly called a supporting TV grandfather role while longing for Lear. He never married and had no children, leaving no direct heirs. He died on November 17, 2017, at the age of 91 at the Lillian Booth Actors Home in New Jersey from natural causes, largely forgotten by the Hollywood spotlight. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $5 million, built through decades of stage work, television appearances, and lucrative voice acting roles, particularly as Panthro in Thundercats. Merlin Santana was born on March 14, 1976, and played Stanley in The Cosby Show in 1991 at the age of 15. Stanley was confident, witty, and cheeky, the kind of boy who challenged Rudy Huxtable and charmed audiences with his swagger. But Merlin's real life, far from sitcom laughs, spiraled into one of the most tragic stories of 2000's Black Hollywood. Born to Dominican immigrants in a crime-ridden neighborhood of Manhattan, Merlin's childhood was surrounded by violence, drugs, and unstable role models. He was managed aggressively by his mother, who pushed him into commercials and sitcoms to escape poverty, but behind that maternal ambition was control and paranoia. As his fame rose, especially with roles in The Steve Harvey Show and Moshe, Merlin struggled with isolation, using women and late-night partying to mask his deep mistrust of people. His success attracted envy, and he began carrying weapons after receiving death threats from former friends. He had a reputation for being cocky on set, with some co-stars complaining that his attitude was too street and confrontational. His downfall came not through scandal, but through tragedy. In 2002, a 15-year-old girl falsely claimed Merlin tried to assault her, prompting her boyfriend and another man to ambush him with bullets as he sat in a car in South LA. He was shot in the head and died instantly. The senselessness of his death on November 9, 2002 shook the entertainment world. He was only 26. He left no will, no long-term investments, and no major assets beyond a leased apartment and a few $1,000s in a business account for a music venture he had just started. His net worth was estimated at $300,000, but friends claim much of that was lost to legal fees, travel, and cash advances. Merlin Santana was a rising star extinguished by lies, jealousy, and the violent truths of fame at the margins. Clarice Taylor was born on September 20th, 1917, in Buckingham County, Virginia, and stepped into the role of Anna Huxtable in The Cosby Show in 1985 at the age of 68. Her character was Cliff Huxtable's no-nonsense, fiercely loving mother, a grounded matriarch who brought the voice of old generations into the modern Black family sitcom. Audiences adored her candor, her warmth, and the way she could make Cliff himself seem like a little boy again. But Taylor's life off-screen was a storm of complexities rarely acknowledged in her polished public image. Born into rural poverty and racial repression, she was the daughter of sharecroppers and was forced to leave school in her teens to help support her family. A working-class fighter with little formal training, she clawed her way into theater by sheer determination. In the early days of her career, she was rejected by multiple agents for being too dark-skinned or too ethnic, and spent years doing menial jobs to survive. Behind the scenes, Taylor was known as a fierce advocate for Black actors, but also as someone difficult to work with. Directors described her as stubborn, occasionally combative, and sharply opinionated. Her biggest professional wound came from being passed over for several lead roles in 1970s cinema that later went to lighter-skinned actresses, a slight she never publicly forgave. Her personal life was equally turbulent. She was twice divorced and had strained relationships with her children due to her decades-long commitment to the stage. One son reportedly struggled with drug abuse, and though Taylor tried to support him financially, the emotional toll distanced them for years. Despite her strong maternal public image, she lived much of her later life alone in New Jersey, tending to church duties and writing political letters. She died on May 30th, 2011, from congestive heart failure at age 93 in Englewood. Her net worth was never officially disclosed, but is estimated between $1 to $2 million, accrued through a long, grueling career in stage, television, and occasional film work. Joe Williams, born December 12, 1918, took on the role of Al Hanks in The Cosby Show in 1985 when he was 67 years old. As Claire Huxtable's soulful father, Al Hanks was smooth, kind, and full of musical wisdom. His brief appearances left a lasting impression, just like Williams' presence in the world of jazz, where he reigned as one of its most commanding baritones. But Joe's polished image masked a life of pain, addiction, and scandal often omitted from tributes. Born Joseph Gareed in Coeur d'Alene, Georgia, Williams' early life was rooted in systemic oppression. His mother abandoned the family when he was a child, and he was raised in Chicago by his grandmother, a devout woman who beat him for singing the blues. As a young man, he struggled with identity and substance use, reportedly drinking heavily in his 20s and falling into depression when gigs dried up. Though he rose to fame with the Count Basie Orchestra in the 50s, Williams was not easy to work with. He was known for berating younger musicians, demanding star treatment, and once walked off a European tour after a dispute over billing. Despite his Grammy win in 1984, he never found long-term stability, struggling with periods of homelessness during the 70s and relying on the kindness of fans and friends to survive. Rumors swirled of a love affair with a much younger singer in the 60s, who later accused him of emotional abuse, though no charges were filed. He married twice. Both ended bitterly, and his only son reportedly became estranged after accusing Joe of choosing fame over fatherhood. By the 1990s, Joe was often ill and increasingly isolated. He collapsed in Las Vegas on March 29, 1999, after suffering a respiratory illness and died shortly after at the age of 80. Though the official cause was listed as natural, insiders say he had ignored his worsening condition to avoid appearing weak. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $3 to $5 million, largely from royalties, licensing, and a Las Vegas property. Elaine Stretch was born on February 2, 1925, and played Mrs. McGee in The Cosby Show in 1989 at the age of 64. As a no-nonsense school teacher with a biting tongue and conservative worldview, Mrs. McGee clashed hilariously with the easygoing Huxtables, offering a rare dose of cold reality in the show's otherwise idealized world. But behind her commanding screen presence, Elaine's real life was steeped in pain, addiction, and regret. Born into a wealthy yet emotionally cold Catholic family in Detroit, she often said she learned to act before she learned to cry. Sent to finishing school at 10 and rejected affection from a distant mother, she masked her deep insecurities with sarcasm. Her Broadway stardom came at a heavy cost. Stretch became infamous for explosive temper tantrums, lateness, and belittling crew members. She was fired mid-rehearsal more than once, and one incident in 1971 where she slapped a stage manager during tech rehearsal nearly ended her career. A functioning alcoholic for decades, Elaine downed martinis before curtain call, earning her the nickname Broadway's Drunk Aunt. Her romantic history was equally chaotic. She was engaged to actor Gig Young, who later murdered his wife and killed himself. Stretch narrowly escaped that fate but lived with guilt and obsession over what could have been. Her one marriage to British actor John Bay ended with his death and her descent into isolation. Diagnosed with diabetes and stomach cancer in her later years, she refused assisted care and insisted on performing even when her memory and mobility deteriorated. She died on July 17, 2014, in Birmingham, Michigan, at age 89, from complications related to alcoholism, cancer, and diabetes. Her estate included a Manhattan co-op, vintage jewelry, and royalties from Broadway recordings, totaling an estimated $10 million. In death, she was praised as a legend, but few dared to mention the trail of damage she left behind. Roscoe Lee Brown was born on May 2, 1922, and portrayed Dr. Barnabas Foster in The Cosby Show in 1986 at the age of 64. His role as the cultured professor was a rare depiction of a refined, eloquent black intellectual on primetime television, and he delivered it with his trademark Shakespearean cadence and gravitas. Audiences admired him for embodying dignity and authority, elevating the tone of the show whenever he appeared. However, behind the facade of polished sophistication lay a man who endured a silent war with the system. Brown was raised in a racially segregated America where intellectual ambition from a black boy in Woodbury, New Jersey, was met with disbelief and condescension. Though he earned his degrees from Lincoln University and later pursued literature in France, he often spoke of the deep loneliness he felt being too white for the black world and too black for the white world. His acting career, though long and decorated, was a battlefield of typecasting, studio racism, and creative suppression. While he avoided public scandal, insiders in the theater world whispered of his notorious perfectionism and his quiet disdain for actors he deemed lazy or unserious. His biggest professional humiliation came when he was dropped last minute from a Broadway revival in the 1970s due to conflicts with the white director, an incident that left him emotionally scarred. Brown never married and kept his personal life tightly guarded. Rumors circulated of a long-term relationship with a fellow male actor, but he never addressed them publicly. He reportedly battled with periods of isolation and depression, especially in the years following his retirement. He died on April 11, 2007 in Los Angeles from stomach cancer at the age of 84. His estate, comprised of real estate, artwork, and royalty earnings, was estimated between $5 to $7 million. Though revered posthumously, many believe Brown's full brilliance was deliberately muted in an industry that never quite knew what to do with this type of genius. Michelle Thomas was born on September 23, 1968, and portrayed Justine Phillips in The Cosby Show, beginning in 1988 at the age of 20. Justine was the soft-spoken, level-headed girlfriend of Theo Huxtable. Her calm demeanor and emotional intelligence made her one of the few truly grounded characters amid the show's chaotic teenage storylines. But while Michelle's on-screen presence radiated serenity, her off-screen life was marked by buried pain and haunting silence. Raised by jazz saxophonist Dennis Thomas of Cool and the Gang and his wife, Michelle grew up in a household filled with music, but also intense pressure. Her parents demanded perfection, and she internalized this from an early age, leading to years of suppressed anxiety and body image struggles. Despite being crowned Miss Talented Teen International at 15, Michelle's Hollywood journey was riddled with rejection. She was frequently told she was too modest, too clean for the roles available to young black women in the late 80s and early 90s. There were quiet whispers in the industry that she refused to compromise her values, turning down roles involving nudity or partying, which led to her being unofficially blacklisted from major teen drama franchises. Her relationship with Malcolm Jamal Warner was the subject of industry gossip, with insiders alleging emotional volatility behind their breakup, though both remained quiet publicly. Michelle secretly battled her illness for months, refusing chemotherapy at first due to her holistic beliefs, which only worsened her condition. She collapsed on set during a sitcom guest spot and was rushed to the hospital, where the rare cancer was diagnosed. She died on December 23, 1998, at Manhattan's Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, just 3 months after turning 30. She left behind minimal assets, some savings, a few royalty checks, and a modest apartment in Los Angeles. Her net worth at the time of death was around $300,000, a heartbreakingly small sum for someone with such immense talent and purity of spirit. Moses Gunn was born on October 2, 1929, in St. Louis, Missouri, and joined The Cosby Show in 1989 at the age of 60, portraying Dr. Lotus, a composed cerebral figure whose wisdom and gravitas left a quiet but lasting impression on audiences. Gunn brought with him a natural authority forged not just on stage, but in life. He was a Shakespearean titan, a founding member of the Negro Ensemble Company, and an actor who had played everything from Othello to Booker T. Washington. But the path behind his thunderous voice and stern eyes was anything but easy. Gunn was born into poverty and tragedy. His mother died when he was a child, and his father abandoned the family, leaving Moses to survive on the streets. He spent part of his youth homeless, sleeping in rail yards, enduring brutal racism in segregated Missouri, and working menial jobs to pay for school. That trauma never fully left him. Though he commanded respect in the theater world, Gunn struggled with the Hollywood machine, where his commanding presence was often sidelined in favor of flashier, marketable names. He was known to turn down roles he deemed demeaning or nonsense, costing him fame and major paychecks. Colleagues described him as intensely disciplined but hard to approach. He held deep grudges, distrusted many producers, and had open disdain for actors who sold out. Despite being a respected mentor, he often clashed with directors over script integrity, earning him a reputation as difficult. His marriage to Gwendolyn Mama Landis, though long-lasting, was not without friction. He reportedly battled severe asthma attacks that triggered rage and paranoia, and insiders claimed he isolated himself for days when ill. Gunn's biggest heartbreak came when Hollywood continuously overlooked him for the kind of complex leading roles he gave his life to on stage. He died on December 16, 1993, at age 64 in Guilford, Connecticut, from complications related to asthma, a condition he had hidden during many performances. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated between $2 to $3 million, accumulated mostly from theater and limited but impactful film and television roles. Lou Meyers was born on September 26, 1935, and played Mr. Davis on The Cosby Show in 1987 at age 52. On screen, he was a warm, genial figure with a knowing smile and old-school wisdom, blending seamlessly into the show's theme of strong black families and respectful elders. But off-screen, Lou's life was a jagged path of reinvention. Raised in the racially segregated hills of Cabin Creek, West Virginia, he grew up in poverty, the youngest of 10 children. His father died when Lou was just 5, and his mother took in laundry and cooked for white families to survive. He developed a stutter from the stress and was frequently mocked in school, which made him retreat into characters and voices as a coping mechanism. Though he became a respected actor, Lou's journey was marred by bitterness over being typecast. He resented that despite his classical training, Hollywood repeatedly gave him wise old black man roles. According to close friends, Lou had a fiery temper and once stormed off a set after being asked to perform what he called a coon shuffle for a sitcom role. He also battled a gambling problem in the late 80s, reportedly losing thousands at riverboat casinos and missing mortgage payments. Though never married, he had a complicated relationship with a woman who claimed he fathered her child. Meyers denied it, and paternity was never established. Toward the end of his life, his health declined rapidly. He lost vision in one eye, suffered strokes, and struggled with untreated high blood pressure. He died on February 19, 2013, in Charleston, West Virginia, at age 77, due to pneumonia and heart failure. His estate, while modest, estimated between $1 to $2 million, included royalties from A Different World, a small home, and a local arts foundation he helped fund. Though admired for his passion and commitment to Black theater, Lou Meyers died haunted by the feeling he was never truly seen for his full range of talent. Lynn Thigpen was born on December 22, 1948, and joined The Cosby Show in 1991 as Mrs. Hudson at the age of 43. Her character, a sharp-witted, no-nonsense professional woman, echoed the quiet power and authority that Lynn brought to all her roles. Though her appearance on the show was brief, it showcased her rare ability to command a room with a single glance. But while audiences respected her strength, few knew the turbulent complexities that shaped her. Growing up in Joliet, Illinois, Lynn faced a childhood marked by economic instability and racial prejudice. Her father, a steelworker, was often unemployed, and her mother battled severe depression, leaving young Lynn to raise herself emotionally. She sought refuge in books and music, but was mocked for her deep voice and commanding stature, traits she would later use to defy casting stereotypes. Despite critical acclaim on stage, including a Tony win, Lynn struggled in Hollywood, where Black women of intellect were seen as too serious or difficult to market. She was quietly pushed out of 2 major television projects in the late 1990s after clashing with white male producers over racially tone-deaf scripts, and she was labeled uncooperative in industry whispers. Her staunch refusal to play roles that degraded Black women often cost her work. Personally, Lynn kept relationships at arm's length, allegedly ending a long-term partnership with a fellow actor after he pressured her to soften her image. Friends noted that she suffered from insomnia and anxiety, worsened by relentless work and a growing fear of irrelevance in the digital age. On March 12, 2003, she died suddenly of a cerebral hemorrhage at her home in Marina del Rey, California, at just 54 years old. Her estate included several properties, a lifetime of residuals from theater and voice work, and investments in Black-led theater companies. Her net worth was estimated at $2.5 million, but her deeper legacy lies in the roles she refused to take and the integrity she never abandoned, even when it cost her everything. Ethel Aaylor was born on May 1, 1930, and portrayed Carrie Hanks in The Cosby Show, beginning in 1984 at the age of 54. As Claire Huxtable's elegant mother, Carrie Hanks was regal yet warm, a maternal figure who offered quiet strength and timeless wisdom. Her appearances brought grace and composure to the screen, and audiences respected her dignified presence, perhaps unaware that the woman behind the role had endured a lifetime of internal battles, masked behind poise. Born in the deeply segregated south of Whistler, Alabama, Aaylor grew up in a household where emotional expression was considered weakness and racial violence was an ever-present fear. Her mother was strict to the point of cruelty, and her father, a railroad worker, was absent for much of her childhood. Despite these limitations, she found her voice, literally through music, but was mocked for her ambitions in a town that expected Black women to keep their heads down. After moving north and entering the theater world, Ethel faced relentless rejection. She was told her appearance was too strong for leading roles and often relegated to playing maids or background characters in early Broadway auditions. Though revered later in life for her classical training and work in To Sleep with Anger, her career was riddled with setbacks. She was fired from one national stage tour for allegedly refusing to cooperate with white castmates, though colleagues suggested it was because she spoke out against racial bias in costuming. Known privately as guarded and fiercely proud, she refused interviews for most of her career and cut ties with several family members who she felt tried to exploit her modest fame. She never married and had no children, though whispers in theatrical circles suggested a long-term relationship with a married jazz musician that ended when he died suddenly in the 70s. In her final years, she reportedly suffered from early cognitive decline and was placed in a care facility in Loma Linda, California, where she died on November 18, 2018, just shy of turning 89. Her estate included a rent-controlled New York apartment and modest savings from decades of union work, estimated at around $1 to $2 million. Bill Gunn was born on July 15, 1929, and played the role of Homer on The Cosby Show in 1986 at age 57. The character, though minor, carried a soulfulness that only someone like Gunn, deeply tormented and misunderstood, could bring. His real-life story, however, was far more harrowing than any character he portrayed. Born into poverty in Philadelphia, Gunn grew up in a home riddled with mental illness and instability. His father, a factory worker, was reportedly abusive and often berated him for his artistic aspirations. Bullied in school for his delicate mannerisms and poetic speech, Bill found solace in books and theater, escaping into worlds he would later try to recreate on screen and paper. Despite his massive talent, Gunn was blackballed by Hollywood for being outspoken, sexually ambiguous, and politically radical. His 1973 cult film, Ganja and Hess, was mutilated by studios, which labeled it too strange and too black. This crushing blow nearly ended his career. He was known for his heavy drinking, erratic behavior on set, and tendency to burn bridges with industry executives. Gunn's personal life was equally turbulent. He had multiple intense relationships with both men and women, most of which ended in betrayal or abandonment. He never married, and by the 1980s, he was living alone in a one-bedroom apartment in Harlem, surviving mostly on grants and the kindness of fellow artists. In his final years, Gunn struggled silently with HIV, which later developed into AIDS-related complications. He died on April 5, 1989, in New York City, officially from encephalitis linked to AIDS, at the age of 59. At the time of his death, his net worth was modest, estimated between $300,000 and $500,000, mostly from royalties, a few remaining screenplays, and rare book sales. Despite his genius, the industry largely ignored him while he lived, only acknowledging his vision years after his death. Ron Foster was born on February 19, 1930, in Wichita, Kansas, and appeared on The Cosby Show in 1987 at the age of 57, playing Herb Temple, a quiet, respectable presence who added realism and weight to a family sitcom grounded in middle-class black life. While his role was small, Foster's background in film and television was anything but. A journeyman actor with more than 80 credits, Foster moved easily between the heroic and the sinister, bringing to life detectives, businessmen, and the occasional villain with an uncanny fluidity. Yet behind that versatile career was a man who lived with persistent artistic insecurity. Raised in a working-class home during the Dust Bowl era, Foster's early life was marked by economic hardship, emotional suppression, and a strict disciplinarian father who discouraged anything artistic. After briefly serving in the military, Foster drifted through minor theater companies before breaking into TV, but never into stardom. He was seen by many casting directors as dependable but replaceable, and that label haunted him for decades. His most bitter professional failure came in the late 1960s when he lost the lead role in a major NBC series to a younger actor, prompting a breakdown that led to a temporary retreat from acting. Industry insiders often described him as polite but detached, someone who kept a quiet distance and rarely socialized. Although married to actress Mary Lou Taylor, rumors persisted, unconfirmed but persistent, that their relationship was more of a professional alliance than a passionate union. He had no children, and in later life, he was often seen walking alone around the Santa Monica Pier, notebook in hand, writing screenplays that would never be produced. When his health began to fail due to an undisclosed illness, Foster refused interviews, fan conventions, and all offers for memoirs, insisting his life was nobody's business. He died on February 26, 2015, just 1 week after his 85th birthday. His net worth was estimated between $1 to $2 million, earned through decades of solid, if unspectacular work. Christoph Street John was born on July 15, 1966, and portrayed David James in The Cosby Show in 1984 at the age of 18. His character, a smooth and sensitive boyfriend to Denise Huxtable, brought a fresh, relatable dynamic to the show, especially for younger viewers. With his youthful charisma and expressive eyes, David James was a character full of potential. But like many early roles in television, it was brief. What audiences didn't know was that the actor behind the role was already navigating immense internal pressure. Christoph was the son of a Hollywood father and a commercial model mother, and his childhood was a storm of ambition and confusion. His father pushed him into acting before he was 10, forcing him into auditions and film sets where he learned early to fake smiles and suppress anxiety. Behind closed doors, his home was filled with tension. His parents divorced amid allegations of infidelity and screaming matches, and Christoph often found himself caught in the emotional crossfire. He turned to acting not out of love, but as a survival mechanism. Though he gained national fame through The Young and the Restless, where he played Neil Winters for nearly 30 years, his off-screen life was unraveling. He battled alcoholism quietly for years, with several stints in rehab. Friends reported mood swings, reclusive behavior, and prolonged disappearances between tapings. His most crushing personal tragedy came in 2014 when his 24-year-old son Julian, who had long suffered from schizophrenia, died by suicide while under care at a mental health facility. Christoph never recovered. He publicly blamed the facility and filed lawsuits, but privately spiraled into depression and guilt, often admitting in interviews that he felt like a failed father. His second marriage collapsed shortly after, and he was hospitalized multiple times for psychiatric observation following alarming social media posts. On February 3, 2019, Christoph was found dead at his Los Angeles home. The cause was hypertrophic heart disease, with alcohol a contributing factor. He was just 52. His estate, valued at around $4 to $6 million, included real estate in California, royalties from The Young and the Restless, and various brand partnerships. Thank you for watching as we reflected on the lives and legacies of the actors from The Cosby Show who are no longer with us. Their humor, charm, and unforgettable performances brought joy to millions and helped shape the show into a classic. While their journeys ended far too soon, their impact lives on through every scene, every laugh, and every memory they've left behind. As we honor their lives, we're reminded of how deeply television can touch our hearts. Join us next time as we look back at more stars who left us too soon, but whose stories continue to shine.